can you share, please, AI initiative gone right? Okay. Yeah, with technology, with people and the organization around it.
Yeah, there's a number of use cases that I see today that are really powerful that at least we're working on, and we see significant upside. So I think the first is around supply chain. Supply chain, surprisingly, a lot of it runs in people's inboxes. Invoice comes in, it gets put into a system, gets managed. And I'm not just talking about small organizations. I'm talking about up to Fortune 50. And this gone right, we see is there's sort of two dimensions. One is detection of is that how do you speed that process up so you can have a much more accurate view of your supply chain. And so by being able to go through and take, the unstructured data documents of multiple suppliers and being able to aggregate them quickly and put them into your supply chain system and understand where you're at and make decisions based on that data is dramatically accelerated. Now we've got these new approaches with large language models and dealing with unstructured data. And what that means in reality is, potentially before you'd pay all your invoices in, say, net 30, but it would take you 45 days to review all the invoices, and you might have had the same invoice 3 times go through the system. And so you've paid this vendor 3 times. And, like in the smaller cases, you can get the vendor to give it back, and it takes some time, and you work it out. In the bigger cases, some of the customers we work with, they're paying their vendors, tens of millions of dollars. And so it's hard to kind of go back and be like, hey, can you give us back $2 million of this large contract? You just kind of negotiate through it. And so that puts a pretty big burden on the organization. At the end of the year, you kind of, figure out the numbers and wherever they end up, they kind of calculate the losses and what the relationships work, et cetera. So in those use cases, we're finding that we're able to make supply chains much more efficient, but also much more accurate. And that reduces costs, not only in fraud detection, although not all these cases are fraud, but they're anomaly detection. And that can be really beneficial for both sides, right? And then the other thing is the leadership team, the auditing teams, they're also able to focus on much more complex problems versus often they're triaging all these types of use cases. That's one. The other one that's been very interesting is supply chain compliance is very hard to do. And so with supply chain compliance, you're looking in your upstream suppliers, right? So people that supply you, and you want to ensure that you get your supply chain is validated. You don't want to suddenly accidentally grab, palm oil from, the wrong place. And there's so much palm oil that's used in so many things, but there's good palm oil producers and bad palm oil producers. And, sometimes they do weird things like, they'll take good palm oil and they'll put bad palm oil in the good palm oil. And, then you get it and you don't even know. And so you want to be able to validate your suppliers. And you do that through a number of reports and initiatives. And the way that most large organizations do it today is they have a large outsourced team that's calling these suppliers up and asking questions. They've got like alerts to figure out if news pops up. They're auditing, documents to see if, did the ship leave with 100 tons and arrive with 100 tons? Or did it leave with 70 and arrive with 100? There's all these different things to look for that these large teams usually outsource. They're usually offshore, but they're very expensive to maintain. And at the end of the year, a CFO or each quarter, the CFO has to, sign this financial disclosure saying my supply chain is validated. And I think for us, we've been able to also take this technology and begin to support, pretty complex supply chain forensics that allow organizations to go through and say, hey, we can validate our supply chain, or just help those teams identify the areas they should go focus on first. So those are two examples that I think are pretty interesting that, 2 years ago would not have been possible without the generative AI technology we have today.
Amazing, Nick. Thank you so much for sharing those. This is inspiring example where business can see the outcomes, right? When team proud of themselves, right? Being able to deliver those, and that's what keeps us running as humans, okay? So,
yeah.
Thank you so very much, Nick. In conclusion, can I ask you for a few takeaways, okay? Because we did all the way, from strategy to examples. So what kind of message we want to leave our audience with in the end?
Yeah, so we did cover a lot of ground today. So let's start with, look, as an organization, definitely focus on the road mapping piece first. Focus on the business to technical alignment. That's number one. Get that right with timelines, and a lot of the stuff will fall into place. Number two, use a principles-driven approach to allow your organization to go through change management and do that in a way where they're incented to learn, but also they have clear guidelines, so they know where they can and can't play. And then number three is, as you look at your, the different opportunities for you to work and different problems, try start with the business side and then come to the technology side. Because if you just look at those two supply chain use cases, if you looked at ChatGPT, you wouldn't think, ESG supply chain compliance at ChatGPT, but actually a lot of it is using the same models. And so when you start from the business use case, we can then translate all of those technologies in over the top and understand those. And so that's my third thing is definitely stay close to the business and identify those opportunities. And then, there's definitely people that can help, will definitely help you. I'm sure there's lots of folks out there. The market is definitely, what I love about this space right now is everyone's sharing ideas. We're always happy to chat to folks and share some of the stuff we're working on or help you out. But those are the three things: really good roadmap, good sort of guidance and principles for change and growth. And number three, staying very close to the business and making sure that, as you get those, don't be afraid to reach out for some help.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you for your time, for sharing your experience and your wisdom. I encourage everyone, contact Nick contact Data Kinetic, okay, for more. Yeah, absolutely, because we're just scratching the surface here in this very short and informative talk, I hope. So thank you, Nick, so very much.
Thank you so much for having me, Irene.